If you realize how much the world has changed and how anxious we are about uncertainties, you will not be surprised by the coming showdown in the snowy Swiss mountain village of Davos. Participants are from all corners, teenage environmental activists to state leaders, billionaires to futurists. And I'm here too, bringing you all the latest and insights. Let's see whether we have the guts and the resolve for a sustainable and cohesive world. Hello and welcome to Davos Insight on the eve of the Lunar Chinese New Year. I'm Tian Wei. The Spring Festival is the most important event of the year for any Chinese around the world. The past year has been an eventful year to say the least. For Carrie, the chief executive of Hong Kong HKSAR, it certainly is not an understatement. This year at the World Economic Forum, she has been leading a big Hong Kong delegation, trying to convey to the international community that Hong Kong remains an attractive place for businesses around the world. I had an in-depth interview with her, covering many aspects about her job as the chief executive of Hong Kong and the challenging realities of Hong Kong today. The virus is really getting serious. So what are some of the most important contingency plans you have in mind for Hong Kong?
Given the proximity of Hong Kong with the mainland, and there's a very frequent and intense flow of people between the two places, we have been keeping ourselves on the alert from almost day one when we received notification on the 31st of December. So now that we have 2 confirmed cases of this virus, we've of course stepped up all our contingency arrangements and put in additional measures. We are requiring passengers to fill in health declaration forms at both the airport as well as the high-speed train. We will be even more vigilant in our border control points in terms of surveillance, checking of temperature. And by the way, this system of surveillance is proven to be very effective because the 2 confirmed cases were both picked up at the control point when they came in, and through the surveillance and the temperature checking, we discovered that they were having a fever and with some symptoms, so we sent them to hospital immediately. And after confirmation, of course, they are now put in isolation. And we are doing the contact tracing in order to put these people in close contacts with the 2 confirmed cases under quarantine. We have cancelled some of the large-scale celebration events so that people will be put on the alert. And we are also giving a health advice to the people if they go out to meet friends. They should also be very careful about their personal hygiene.
You are handling 2 things all at the same time. One is the health crisis at home. The other, of course, is how to promote Hong Kong. What do you consider as the most important message you want to convey to people in Hong Kong and those who ask whether Hong Kong is safe in terms of health?
Well, health comes first. Of everything, because while the economy could recover after a while, if we are suffering from a public health problem, then the consequences could be very serious for the people of Hong Kong and also for visitors coming to Hong Kong. So I would say that this is now the top priority of my government, is to ensure that our prevention and control of this infectious disease will ensure that we will not be made vulnerable by the spread of this disease. And whatever we are now doing, with that objective in mind, we will always monitor very closely and review on almost a daily basis to see what additional measures we could put in place.
Is that the lessons we learned from SARS?
Definitely. Definitely. Well, during the SARS period, I'm sure many people will remember Hong Kong suffered tremendously. And in the last 17 years or so, we have built up very robust systems. We have a lot of experts to help us on the scientific side. We have professional clinicians to help us on the clinical side. And we have also put in place the various preventive measures. So, for example, on this occasion, well before the first case was confirmed, we have already amended the legislation to put this unknown virus, because up to now it was really very unknown.
It is.
into a legal regime to enable the Hong Kong government authorities will have the statutory powers to do something which in normal days you will not easily do it, but when you have a public health crisis, you need to be more vigilant and to be able to do something.
You're here to promote Hong Kong. You lead a very big delegation of Hong Kong, shall I say even bigger than last year, if I remember right, in order to persuade people that Hong Kong is still a place that is attractive for investment and also for the international community. But not many, I would say, would hear directly earlier messages coming from you. What is it like to put yourself out there?
I would say that coming to World Economic Forum at Davos has provided us with a very good platform in normal days to promote Hong Kong. But on this particular occasion, after 7 months of social unrest and with some media reporting, which I would say is not comprehensive enough, it is always good to have this first-hand opportunity to explain the Hong Kong situation. Tianwei, you mentioned about how I could persuade people about confidence in Hong Kong. I am pleasantly surprised that many of the government leaders and also business leaders I met over these 2-3 days in Davos, they told me that they're all very aware of the unique strengths of Hong Kong. The rule of law, the independence of judiciary, the gateway function to the mainland of China, and also the Greater Bay Area, the Belt and Road initiatives, and that's why they all take a long-term view about Hong Kong. So when you take a long-term view about Hong Kong, you need not be too unduly worried about certain events that have taken place in recent months.
What do you mean by long-term?
Well, long-term means you are investing in a place where there is a good future. And under one country, two systems, and continue to enjoy our strategic advantages while having the support, I would say the full support of the central government, is one of that confidence booster for many investors.
You've been encountering, Madam Chief Executive, a lot of different things over the past 1 year. Even here at the World Economic Forum, we saw people came up to you and asked you, why didn't you quit? We also saw people ask you, why didn't you react earlier?
Yeah.
So what are your answers?
Hong Kong has faced some unprecedented challenges in the past 7 months. I would say that the situation that we are facing, we have to handle, is something that we have never experienced before. So it is always very easy to comment and criticize whether we should have done this thing, whether we should have done that thing, and the timing and the intensity. But I would just say this, I stick to principles, because it is in that sort of situation of uncertainty that one should really stand firm on points of principle. And my points of principle are simple. One is one country, two systems, and the protection of all the rights and freedoms enshrined in the basic law. So I would not easily concede to demands which deviate from this very important principle. The second thing is the rule of law. Hong Kong is always proud of the rule of law, and the rule of law underlines Hong Kong's success. If you ask a business leader, they said that the first thing they look for in a place to consider investment is whether that place has a rule of law, whether if they end up with trouble, there is an impartial system to give them justice. The third element is, of course, to preserve the institutional strengths of Hong Kong. So for political demands that, to the extent of demanding that we should dissolve the Hong Kong police force, that is something that I will not concede, because that will bring very serious consequences for Hong Kong's law and order. So sometimes when people did not fully realize that in responding to political demands, we have to bear in mind those very important principles instead of just going for political expediency or making my life or the government's life easier. We will not do that, because that would be giving up the long-term interests of Hong Kong.
People have been noticed over the past 1 year, for example, during the unrest in Hong Kong, the central authorities in Beijing did not act in a very, very active way, but rather leave it to the Hong Kong HKSAR government to handle it. So how is that reflecting about the Beijing's understanding of one country, two systems, and what is exactly your understanding, Madam Chief Executive, of the one country, two systems?
Well, there is a very authoritative source to understand one country, two systems, and that is the remarks made by President Xi Jinping on the 1st of July 2017 when he came to Hong Kong. He presided over my swearing-in ceremony and made a very important speech. To give you this analogy, one country, two systems is a complete sort of complete arrangement. You cannot just take two systems on its own without bearing in mind the very importance of one country. So just like a tree, one country is the roots. So the roots have to be very deep and very strong before the two systems could flourish. So this means that we have to fully respect and uphold and insist on one country, but at the same time respect the two systems' differences. So it is only under that sort of very clear understanding that the one country, two systems principle could be implemented in an accurate and comprehensive manner.
Madam Chief Executive, if you look at some of the international media coverage, the young people on the street are being described as the martyrs, or the so-called chosen generation. What do you make of these kinds of descriptions for those young people from Hong Kong, some of whom are even violent over the past few months? What do you make of the role of the media over the past few months in terms of presenting the facts and analyzing situations as they are?
As I said before, that has been a very extensive coverage of Hong Kong situation by the Western media. That is fine, but of course I expect coverage to be more objective and more accurate and more comprehensive.
They say to their standards they already are.
Well, there's certainly room for different interpretations of that sort of reporting. But when one sees the degree of violence in some of these protests by rioters, I think we can readily describe them as rioters. If they are throwing petrol bombs at police, if they are burning up shops, if they are just hurling bricks at bystanders, or even setting people on fire, just because that particular person held a different view from the rioters, I would find it very unacceptable to describe them as freedom fighters or pro-democracy demonstrators. They're certainly well beyond that.
Many are concerned, Madam Chief Executive, about this generation of young people in Hong Kong. Some are very worried about what kinds of attitude they would have toward their homeland and also even about their future, about the world. What do you think can be the thing that you can do in order to help save their future?
Well, since taking office, I attach a lot of importance to nurturing young people. I gave them more opportunities to participate in decision-making in the government by bringing them onto government boards and committees. I actually set a target that 15% of the members on the government boards and committees should be young people under the age of 35. But the important thing is on national education. I think young people in Hong Kong should be nurtured to have that very stronger sense of national identity. And also civic responsibility. So this is something that we will continue to work at and work very hard at, because I don't think any society should give up on her young people, because young people are our future. If they do not see the world in the right way now, it is for us to help them.
What about Hong Kong's economy? Now you committed already about reforms and providing more social support for the people in Hong Kong. How are we going to see those being realized? The time frame, particularly also you have to work with different forces in Hong Kong to make it come true. Now, earlier Chief Executive did not manage to do many of those you promised earlier.
Well, actually, we were quite good in terms of delivering on initiatives to diversify Hong Kong's economy. We are going into innovation and technology, investing heavily in these projects, incubation, startups, in order to provide young people with more opportunities. We are working very closely with Guangdong to develop more youth entrepreneurial co-working spaces, to give young people more opportunities to start their own businesses. But of course, there's always room for doing more. But what we now face is inevitably Hong Kong may have to go into a recession. So at times of recession, while we will continue to invest and grow the economy, we have to provide relief measures. And the government has already implemented 4 rounds of relief measures, incurring about 25 billion Hong Kong dollars. We'll continue to do that. And the purpose of these relief measures, one is to help the businesses and to preserve the jobs as much as possible. Because losing one's job could be very devastating for the individual and the family. The other is for the underprivileged, to help them to overcome the difficult situation.
Quick note, what kinds of recession, the number, do you know?
We are projecting a negative growth for 2019, although we have not actually announced it, but it is very likely to be a negative growth of about minus 1.3%. 2020, there are different projections by the corporations, but we will have to wait for the financial secretary to announce it in his budget the latter part of next month.
My final question for you, Madam Chief Executive, is that what about the financial stability of Hong Kong? And also, what about the status Hong Kong has been enjoying as a market economy? There were threats against all of this during the past few months of chaos in Hong Kong from outside. What do you make of all these challenges, if we could put it that way?
Well, actually, what has happened in the past 7 months has proven Hong Kong's resilience and robustness as far as the financial sector is concerned. We have not seen any problem in the banking sector, in the securities market, and in other financial services. Quite on the contrary, 2019 was a good year for our securities industry. We were again the world's #1 in terms of IPO funds raised. And we are rolling out other measures to grow Hong Kong's financial industry, which now accounts for 19.7% of Hong Kong's GDP. So that proves that Hong Kong is a very resilient global financial center. And this actually gives people the level of confidence in going into the future.
So you're not afraid of them?
I think we have proven that we can rise to the challenge.
The uncertainties in the world today make all of us more curious about history and what we can really learn from history. With multiple layers of challenges in geopolitics, unilateralism, technologies and its applications, as well as global health and environmental crisis, what can we learn really from history? How history should be learned to avoid future mistakes? This is my exclusive interview with Carrie, a young historian whose books have been making international headlines as they challenge the traditional narrative of history. At this year's World Economic Forum, he discussed with Ren Zhengfei, founder of Huawei, on many of these issues. Let's hear his takeaways from that interaction. I saw you and Mr. Ren, who is coming from Huawei, was having a great discussion.
Yeah, it was a very interesting discussion.
Very different ways of looking at the world, I have to say.
Yeah, I think it's the difference between a historian on the one hand and an entrepreneur and very successful business person on the other hand, which is natural. You know, entrepreneurs and business people, they often have a far more optimistic view of the opportunities the technology is giving us because they are leading it.
Yeah.
And historians tend to have a more skeptical view.
How skeptical are you, really, about our immediate future? Let's put it that way.
Well, Well, I think that I agree completely that the new technologies like artificial intelligence are opening enormous opportunities before humankind and can improve life in a dramatic way. But there are also dangers. And you know, again, that the entrepreneurs, the engineers, the business people, they focus on the opportunities. And it becomes the job of historians like me to highlight the ways that things can go wrong.
Mm-hmm.
If you think about the Industrial Revolution, for example, in the 19th century, so eventually, when you look at the big picture, then yes, the Industrial Revolution really improved the living conditions of people all over the world. But on the way, if you just think, for instance, what the Industrial Revolution did to China in the 19th and early 20th century, it was terrible.
War after war.
War after war,
Occupation.
occupation, exploitation, poverty, it was terrible.
Yeah.
So yes, eventually, from 2020, you can look back and you say, yes, well, overall it was okay. But if you live in China in 1920 or 1880, it doesn't look good at all.
So you're
And
saying in the middle of it, there's no win-win. Is that what you're trying to say?
there could be win-win, depending on how it develops.
How?
In the Industrial Revolution, you had a few countries leading the Industrial Revolution, like England, like Germany, like Japan. And most countries were far behind, and the leaders basically conquered and exploited everybody else. So life was good, maybe, improving in England, but not in India or in China. Now in the 21st century, the same thing may repeat itself with AI. A few countries, not the same ones, are leading the AI revolution. They will reap enormous benefits, economically, politically, while other countries could completely collapse, could be conquered, exploited. Today, you don't even need to send soldiers overseas
No, you don't need
in
to.
order to exploit a country. You can have a data colony. If you have enough data about a country, you don't need soldiers.
Pretty much pessimism, shall I say, in your way of looking at the immediate future. But it's interesting to me, Professor, how you earlier at the very beginning attracted people's attention through talking about biological history.
Yes.
And now you are coming to the technical areas and looking at how is that shaping people's lives. How do you see these very different ways of looking at history? Which do you think at this moment is the most important? How would you make your choice?
No, we need both. I mean, about biological history, you can't understand history without biology,
Yeah.
because humans are animals. Really, the technological revolution that is happening today also cannot be understood without evolution and biology. Because, you know, the real power of AI is to decipher, to hack human biology. Even if you think about a self-driving vehicle, you think, what's the connection with biology and evolution? But to put a self-driving vehicle on the road, that vehicle needs to understand human biology, human emotions.
Yes.
The vehicle needs to understand human pedestrians, human passengers, to tell the difference between a teenager and an elderly person, between an angry person, a drunk person maybe, a calm person. If the car can't differentiate and doesn't understand that a drunk teenager behaves differently from an angry elderly person, the car is not safe to drive on the road.
Right.
So how to understand human emotions is a key feature even of something like a self-driving vehicle. So biology and history and AI, they all come together. If you think about the AI revolution, just as computers, without biology, without history, you don't really understand.
What about the geopolitical history? How is that related to biology in a way? If we look at it through the biological way, it would mean for definite that we are like animals, and it's about zero-sum game.
No.
It's not the rules of the jungle, isn't it?
No, I think we broke the rules of the jungle.
How come this time is exceptional? I don't understand why.
You know, the rule of the jungle, what it says politically, is that for every 2 nearby countries, you have a scenario that they will go to war next year. This is the rule of the jungle. And for all of history almost, this rule was in force. So peace always meant just the temporary absence of war. For most of history, if you say that China and Japan are at peace, or Athens and Sparta in ancient Greece are at peace, it means that now they are not at war, but next year they might be.
But you could look at it the other way around too, right? It just really depends on your description.
No, but the really amazing thing is that over the last few decades, we broke this rule. Now we no longer live in the jungle. Today, for most countries, you cannot really imagine a war, maybe in 20 years, who knows. But a war next year is unimaginable.
How did we break the rules?
We created a new kind of global order, which is rule-based, which built trust gradually between countries, largely because of common threats like a nuclear war, which will destroy everybody. Humans, also biologically, they have violent tendencies, but humans have this unique ability to create new kinds of order by creating new stories.
But we're
and new
already
rules.
breaking this order. We talk about unilateralism these days in the world, isn't it?
Now
and there's a great danger of that. In China, for example, there's a virus issue going on about the flu, and people just cannot imagine if there's no global cooperation or only decoupling in science and technology research, how horrific
that
the
will
situation
be
will be. But that is where we're heading, apparently.
Yes.
So is that what you're saying right here?
That's a very big danger. I mean, for the last couple of decades, we created this new kind of order, but this is our creation. It didn't come from some god.
No.
It's not the laws of nature. It's our creation. And if we don't maintain it, it will break down, and we'll be back in the jungle with these terrifying new powers, and this could be the end of our species. So this is why the collapse of the global order in the last few years is extremely worrying. What I, as a historian, feel is that people just became complacent. They just forgot. You know, the generation that was alive in the first half of the 20th century and experienced all the terrible wars and revolutions, that generation is dying. Most people, even in leading positions, they don't remember what it was like because they were not alive.
So history is not told well. Is that what you're trying to say?
Yes, history is too much exploited to just inflame nationalistic feelings instead of warning people against the danger of being just every nation for itself and letting the global order collapse.
Watching Davos Insight, I'm Tian Wei. This program is coming to you on the eve of the Chinese Lunar New Year. As we all know, Chinese people from around the world have started celebrations of the Spring Festival. On China's lunar calendar, 2020 is the year of the rat or the year of the mouse, you name it. The hardworking Chinese people get to rest their feet for a few days.
Wishes for the new year. Some may be humble, but straight from the heart.
We're getting old. Happiness matters. I'm 65. Health is everything.
My wish is to sleep at home every day.
Everyone is in good health and make more money. I hope it continues. That's it.
China's Spring Festival travel rush, the largest human migration on Earth. With the development of railways, it is easier for people to get a ticket back home.
For some people, we work and live in different cities, and now there are more trains, and it feels like home and work are getting closer and closer, especially since it's convenient to go home and have a family dinner on Chinese New Year's Eve, and then come back to work without any delay.
More people overseas start to get a clue about the Chinese festival.
What about the zodiac calendar?
The zodiac?
Yeah, with all the animals in it.
Yeah, well, isn't that interesting? I'm a dragon, I like dragons.
Well, I do know that it involves different animals, and I believe it's to do with, I'm not sure who won the race and the order.
Xinjiang, Huailang.
The next 2 weeks will see the biggest population in the world celebrating their most important festival in a year.
So, the year of the rat. We are joining in our Beijing studio Teng Jimeng, freelance cultural commentator, and David Bartosh, professor from the Beijing Foreign Studies University. Happy Lunar Chinese New Year to the both of you.
Thank you. Likewise. Likewise.
Yes. So, how is your vacation like for the Spring Festival to come?
Oh, it will be wonderful. You first or me first?
You absolutely.
Okay. No, jump in.
Jump in. I will go to Hainan.
Okay.
As 2 years before, and I'm looking very much forward to see my Chinese extended family there. My wife and son, they're already on Hainan, so they're waiting for me, and I will see my parents-in-law and members of the extended family, so uncles and aunties and the cousins and their kids.
Can't wait to have fun
will
on
be
the
wonderful.
beach, and also a big family reunion. Professor Tang, what about you?
Well, once again, for me, it's going to be a very big reunion with my mother, with my brother, and also the cousins and all these relatives. I mean, ready to play mahjong
Extended
and
family
playing
also.
all the kind of.
Where is your hometown?
Well, it's Shenyang, back in Liaoning province.
Northeast part of China.
Yes.
And Hainan, of course, is the very southern part of China.
Right. My family comes from Guizhou, originally my Chinese family, but they like to go to Hainan now.
Okay.
Since a few years, and it's great. It's warmer. It's a little bit warmer.
That's why you see so many Chinese that are traveling during the holiday season,
Right.
including the two of you, I guess. Oh, I already counted you in as a Chinese in a way because you married a Chinese wife.
He's one of us.
Yes, exactly, one of us.
I try to enculture myself.
So how is it like to be one of us?
Right.
Oh, it's wonderful. I mean, the great thing about it is that now I have two horizons, two sets of festivals to celebrate. So we have Christmas. We have the Chinese New Year, we have the Easter festivities, and so forth.
Any debate as to which one to celebrate the most? Any debate?
No. We value them as equal, and we see it from
politically correct back at home even. What about for you, Professor Tang?
That's harmony. Let me just add one thing, right? It's harmony, right?
Yeah,
it's all about living in harmony.
I mean, for you, going back to your hometown or to your wife's hometown is always a debate, isn't it? For the Spring Festival, any family is like that.
Luckily, we don't have that debate. My wife was born here in Beijing, and so every single year, right? Every single day, basically, we celebrate things here in Beijing.
Okay, you got your advantage over there.
Right, and so this is the one of the most important time in our life, to go back and join our, siblings and relatives and family out there in this noisy Northeast. And you know that it's going to be big dinner, big banquet, and big fireworks out there.
And big voices, too.
And loud voices. We're known for that, right? I'm sorry.
That's the personality. Having said that, though, have you ever thought about the first facial expressions on your beloved ones' faces when they see you coming back home, the very first moment? I remember those moments very well. I don't know about you, Professor.
It's
particularly your mom.
Yeah, it's the face of yearning, the face of loving, and also the face of very, very much kind of someone that you want to see, you look forward to see with great anticipation in your life.
Even though you tell them about when to arrive, right? When they see you, there's still something that is unexpectedly pleasant in their face.
Right. It's always going back to the roots, right? It's going back to the roots of our existence. Happy memories come up. Also, when I go back to Germany and I see my parents, my sister, it's always happy memories coming up.
Until you have a fight, right? Every holiday is like that. Families all over the world. First hour, beautiful.
That's normal.
But as time goes by, you never know what's going to happen. But that is what family is about, in a way.
Well, dinner table has always been known as the battlefield, right, for different ideas, right, for different thoughts and for different kind of feelings to express.
An Li's movie, actually, is a beautiful illustration of those.
That's right. Even the most recent one called Farewell by Lulu Wang, which is now big in the U.S., it's all about family members getting together and crying to each other. Crying each other on the shoulders and fighting each other on the big table.
Yes, indeed. Everybody is enjoying themselves until there is a fight. It's unavoidable, right? From any family reunion, any culture.
But these are little fights based on deep love and appreciation. So it's like the salt, or the spice in the food.
Of life.
And when we start cooking, may it be in Germany or in China, we always stop these little quarrels. And also the eating. It's so much great food. And I also heard a story that some Chinese families, there's a kitchen god, something like this. Is this true?
Yeah, it is.
The kitchen god will tell the yellow emperor what the family did, and then the new image of the kitchen god will be placed in the kitchen. I think maybe it's northern Chinese.
I mean, sure, yeah. I mean, absolutely, it's northern practice. When I go back to my ancestral home, there's always a god out there. I mean, in the very center of the kitchen, above the stove where you cook. And you burn these kind of haze and stuff like that. It's kind of smoky.
I mean, it's so interesting because
so
cooking has such a central position in Chinese civilization.
It's sacred in a
it's
way.
Sacred. It's sacred. Yeah.
It's related to the gods and the goddess. Having said that, though, if you look at the Chinese zodiac, how come there are so many different kinds of animals? Some would say, if you love China, you have to love the 12 animals. But rats, really? This year?
Well, absolutely. I think they all went back to this very primitive society when farmers farm in the field and they see the rats. And when they cook in the kitchen, I mean, the rats would share our food. I mean, we don't see them as a dangerous thing. I mean, we don't see them as some kind of poisonous. We see them as our neighbors. And so it's all about this very natural harmony.
I think that's very interesting because it tells you a lot about Chinese civilization. So everybody is allowed to step in, right? Everybody is appreciated, tolerated. Even a mouse or rat is...
Well, man and nature in harmony, and rats sing. Rats actually make noises. I mean, like the cat in my home right now.
It's a very holistic way of thinking, isn't it? A very holistic way to
I can see the two of them. See, they're already in love with the rats. Exactly what this year is about. Having said that, the Spring Festival Gala, of course, is still going on as we are talking here in the studio. At the midnight is the most important time for people to ring in the new year and to reflect upon what has been achieved over the past year. Isn't that also a sacred moment?
It is indeed a very, very familial moment. It is also a moment for self-reflection. I mean, because you have done so many things in this past year, and now it's time for you to summarize, to reflect upon what is supposed to be going on and what is not supposed to be going on. You make plans for the new future based on the very past.
And what I found fascinating is that this year of the rat or the mouse it's the starting point of a new 60-year cycle, right? The Chinese calendar has a long 60-year count.
Or this 12,
and then there's 60 years out of the 12. The 5 times 12,
that is the calendrical.
There's a calendarical cycle behind it, and now it's the metal rat, right?
Yes.
You say metal rat, and metal rat is the first year of a 60-year cycle, so it's the starting point of a new 60-year cycle.
That's another significance of the Chinese culture. A lot of anniversaries, a lot of coincidences.
Very complicated. For me as a foreigner, it's very complicated to learn, so
for
I'm
us
studying
too, believe me, also.
But you know what I found fascinating is that I learned, you asked me if I can identify with it. I just learned that the lunar calendar, as Chinese people use it today, was actually is based on a reform in 1645, and the guy who helped to create the new lunar calendar was German. Well, Adam Schall von Bell. He was a German astronomer. He worked for the Qing, the new Qing dynasty emperors, and he was. They asked him to help and to provide the astronomical.
This is the very first time I heard it, but anyway, I think a lot of cultures are certainly also helped.
So we already have a shared history in this regard as well.
Chinese culture has always been known for assimilating other cultures, right? Even right now, we didn't abolish this Gregorian calendar, right? We use the Gregorian.
No, of course, it's a Chinese tradition.
Culture, there are so many Chinese all over the world. And it has become such a phenomenon in many cultures as well. How do you see, the traditions being celebrated elsewhere? What does it mean also these days that many of the families, their children are outside, outside China? For example, whether they are in universities or they're working in foreign countries. This is already a very international China we're talking about, Professor Tang. It's not just rural China.
That's right. I mean, it's all about this globalization, I think, or the Chinese notion of 天下. I mean, because the Chinese watch the world with this grand notion of we are all people living under one big heaven. And so the 天下 idea or philosophy, right? I mean, David, you're a philosophy person, I know. I mean, the whole people all under heaven is all about we are all part of the big family. And so by sending your kid out to the world, to the other parts of the world, I mean, still he's supposed to be in your sight, in your vision, and you are supposed to be actually celebrating by involving, by engaging, and by actually reminding them that you are part of this family.
And I vividly remember also in Germany, we celebrated Chinese New Year with German and Chinese friends together for many years. So we met at a restaurant, And we have celebrated this Chinese festival for 10 years ago, 15 years ago. So it's already an international
That's right, the international
tradition.
side of this Chinese
because
festival.
There are so many Chinese, ethnic
right.
Chinese people living all over the world.
And they're bringing their friends
they bring
to
their
celebrate
friends
their friends' festival.
So it's wonderful.
Together with all of us.
And we have an additional new festival to celebrate. And
Isn't that wonderful? We love more festivals to celebrate. Having said that, though, we're really running out of time before the midnight. So any New Year resolution to share with us? David?
Oh, I'm looking very much forward to the new year. I hope the world will become a better place, more peaceful, and I think we should all work towards that goal and celebrating with friends from other places and getting to know their culture, getting to know the beautiful elements of world culture, I think, is the right way towards that ultimate goal of world
Very
peace.
universal.
Very universal. That's what came to my mind when you asked me.
Exactly, New Year resolution. Go ahead, Professor Tom.
Well, I have 4-eyed and like the eyes of the rat, and I see only things under my nose. And I want to be 鼠目寸光 in Chinese proverb, and which is I wish I could quickly finish my book, which I'm translating.
Okay. What is it about? A good time to do some promo here.
Yeah, well, it's all about the Chinese Beijing capital being liberated back in 1949.
Okay.
And so it's a grand moment.
And the history related to that.
History-related book, and also about the 70th anniversary. About the PRC, the program that we actually did together.
Right, yeah, that was wonderful. Wonderful moment.
So it's a small project that I'm going to focus on in the year of the rat.
So it's time for reflection, right? We reflect back on the decennia which have passed, and now
I see you're already looking forward to the new year. Thank you for both of you. Happy Lunar Chinese New Year to you and your family.
Once again, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. It has been great.
So
Happy New Year. Happy New Year.
Thank you. Yes, indeed. Happy Chinese New Year, the year of the mouse. With that, we're coming to the end of the Davos Insight. Thank you for being with us on our journey in the Swiss Alps. On behalf of the team here in Davos and back in Beijing, we wish you a very happy, healthy Lunar New Year. See you next week.